Everybody needs a partner at some point. Not necessarily a romantic partner, and not necessarily a permanent partner. Just a partner to share something with. A partner to be vulnerable with. And that could mean a small moment in an elevator, or it could mean a lifelong journey. But for Neko Case, growing up, that partner was a constant voice in the darkness. For Neko Case now, though, it's something very, very different. It's about making herself emotionally available every single night and sharing that with a plurality of partners. Be it the audience or a constantly rotating cast of bandmates, which most recently has included Katie Lang and Laura Veirs. In fact, Case Lang Veirs, as they're collectively known, were at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville a few weeks back, and I had a chance to talk to Neko Case about those partnerships. All of them. Things start out with Neko and I getting a little geeky about the Ryman. I mean, it's the original home of the Grand Ole Opry, and when you walk in the door, you kind of get goosebumps, because no matter who you are, how important you might be, or why you're there.
It's not like this weird club that you get into. Mm-hmm. It's very much about the artist and the audience, because the artist isn't the artist without the audience, and they know that, and they just treat everyone so kind. So there was that kind of religious-y feeling there as well. And, I don't know how to explain it. If you're a fan of music, even if you're a musician, I guess there are musicians who aren't necessarily fans of music or see it in that way, but it's really hard not to be starstruck by a particular place. And you know all the stories, like, the story of Loretta Lynn rolling up with her husband and waking up and looking out the window, and it's like, holy there's the Ryman. I'm right in front of it.
No, I totally understand that. I mean, so, you grew up basically entrenched in music then. Like, was there a moment where you decided, I want to do music, or did that?
I think it wasn't something I would admit to myself. And, when I was like 13 or 14, I had no idea that I was worth a shit about anything, honestly. Like, I was a girl in America. My parents could give a shit. My grandma was awesome, of course, but, I didn't necessarily think I had any value or anything to give. And, didn't really grow up in an environment or a society that was like, hey, young girls, oh, you're awesome. Oh, please share your possible talents and wisdom with us, because it enriches the world. Like, no, there was none of that. So it was a really strange thing. And growing up in the 80s, kind of in the whole Reagan era, everything was about art being a pipe dream and kind of being like the pastime of people who were really foolish and irresponsible. That was definitely the main vibe going around, the whole thing. I mean, I'm sure there were people who had parents or friends or family who were very supportive of them going into arts or music or whatever. But unless you were interested in being in the symphony and you had those kind of talents, there just wasn't. That was just ridiculous, a ridiculous idea.
But at a certain point you were like, cool, I want to be a part of this ridiculous idea.
Well, I started the ridiculous idea as a fun thing to do with my friends. And they kind of got me to do it because they knew that I was kind of shy, but I was also a really aggressive kid. So drums were a really good way to start. And I was also really shy. So there was like the castle walls of the drums around me, but I also got to, get my energy out, and it was so much fun. It really was that much fun.
So that was that was an easy way to do it. And then at a certain, you're playing drums and then think what, I want to move out from this castle. I want to go across the drawbridge.
I'm sure I always wanted to sing because I always really liked it. But again, there's that thing where societally and in my family, I didn't think I was worth a shit. So, I couldn't imagine, like, just because I liked doing it and it gave me joy personally alone in the house, it didn't mean that it's something that necessarily anybody else wanted to hear. Like, I never would entertain that. I never would have entertained that idea on my own.
So how did it start? Like, how did that?
Just singing. I think just singing along with people while I was playing drums, and then eventually, I remember I was playing drums with the band Cub on tour, and they let me sing a song in Toledo, Ohio, from the drums once, and there might have been like 3 people there. And it was still really scary, but it was just so much fun to do. And I kind of sang shouty backing vocals with my other bands. And so I'm sure that I think it was a very gradual eking out of being just a really shy person.
So there wasn't a moment where you thought you were playing the drums and then you looked down and you're like, oh, there's nothing here. I'm just in front of the people.
Well, that was really difficult. The standing in front of people without drums was maybe the hardest part of the whole thing.
Is that something that's still an issue for you?
Not really.
I mean, I know you've been doing it for a while. I'm pretty used to it
now, but I could be naked in front of 300 people now and not give a shit. I would feel like, well, here it is. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, who cares,
So how did that change?
You've seen it before. I think just over time, you see people respond to you being vulnerable as a person, and it makes them feel comfortable too, and it's respectful to the audience to acknowledge them by sharing vulnerability. And as a person who loves to watch music, I always really love that when artists do it. And so it's a respectful, casual communication with your audience. Because they're with you all the time, and even though they're made of different people every night, like, they're still your constant friend. And I wouldn't be there if they weren't there. So, I don't know, it's definitely like being friends with a transformer. It's one unit made out of a whole bunch of different units. But you got to think of it as both. The individual units and that's the worst metaphor I've ever made.
I like it though. It's good.
Yeah.
It says that you're a child of the 80s.
Yeah, well, I do like the Transformers, I can't lie. I do. I don't know, it's just one of those things that proves you're more than just an individual. Like, human beings are connected to each other in a way that isn't necessarily on an individual level, and it's just as important and just as heavy and just as it's that group consciousness of do no harm, or I don't want people to hurt me, I don't want people to hurt you. Like, I don't want that. What do you got? Like, what's the good stuff we all have? And how can we charge our engine together, or what brings us joy?
Just in the moment, everything's changed. My dark disposition has been rearranged.
I don't know, like, if you ever go to the circus and you watch people perform together as a troupe, it's like that. It's like, wow, that's the most incredible thing. I'd love to be able to do that. But you have to do that with everybody else's complicity, and not just their complicity, but their passion and their attention and their presence. And that's what the audience and the artists are doing with each other in the best case scenario. Of course, not everybody's there to see the show completely. Some people are there for social reasons, or they're going with someone, and that's totally just as valid and just as amazing, because you're honoring your sense of place, and that's what makes a real neighborhood and what makes a community unique. So it's all a positive thing, really. And I'm totally so deep within the answer to that question, I don't even remember what the question is anymore, but I hope I have made some kind of sense. I'm so sorry.
No. I think that is a beautiful way to look at it and think about it. What intrigues me, though, is that, most musicians, even while they understand that there's a relationship between the audience and the performer, probably don't give it nearly as much thought. I love the way you contextualize that. I mean, how much of that do you think is maybe feeling more isolated growing up, like feeling that you maybe have the need for that and see that in music?
Well, the audience has definitely proven to me that I was not wrong as a kid to rely on the benevolent voice in the dark, which was music and singers and people writing songs. Because, like I said, I didn't really have family. I lived in really rural parts of the world. I had no brothers or sisters. I was often alone and quite lonely, to be honest. So growing up was a pretty lousy time. And, the consistency of the benevolent voice in the dark and feeling like someone understood, or that I was even able to assert myself into a song in a way that made me feel understood, even if I didn't realize that's what I was doing. It's just such an integral, important part of forming your own identity, even in a crappy situation. So I think, just now at this point in my life, there's the whole, yes, it really exists. Everybody out there who's coming to the show, thank you for approving it. Thank you for listening, and thanks for accepting whatever it is that we're trying to give you.
I mean, has that voice ever felt like it's left or failed you in that sense?
No, I mean, I'm a person who writes songs, so I understand that, Joni Mitchell was not thinking specifically about me if she wrote a certain song, and it does not hurt my feelings.
Sure.
But, I used it that way because when you write a song and you put it out, like, it leaves your hands. And a lot of people ask me, performing these songs live, are you feeling emotional? It's like, no, you let them go like birds and you don't expect them to come back. You perform them, and that's a completely different thing. That's connecting with people in the room with you at the time.
Not connecting to like the ideas or the songs themselves.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I really dislike people filming the show, is because I want people to be there at the show. And, cameras also scare me and I forget the words. So it's like, guys, just be cool. Just be here right now. Because this is getting rarer and rarer and rarer. It's like, sometimes I'll see Katie go to the edge of the stage and sing to someone. And I'll hear her voice next to me, which is one of the hugest voices. It is the hugest voice I've ever stood next to. It's like a geyser in a way that makes you start crying at its natural beauty. You're just like, what a crazy physical gift.
I watch as they dance with you. I watch as they sing to you. I watch as they...
And then you'll see the person pull out their camera and try to take a selfie of themselves with her singing. And it's like, why would you not just take that in? What a magical moment that is so unlikely in the world. Like, just let it happen to you. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I totally do. I mean,
I've wanted to just sock people in the face for doing that. Just like, how disrespectful can you be?
Please do. And I mean that. I won't pay your legal fees, but...
I know. See, that's the thing.
I will encourage you to do that. But no, I understand that, because oftentimes I'll find myself in situations and people will ask, well, why didn't you... Where's the picture of that? It's like, well, why do I need it's my it's not your moment. It's my moment. I had that moment. I was there for it.
Yeah, it's like we're not a eclipse. You can look directly at us. Do not fear us. Put the camera down. Put your toilet paper tube with the hole in it down. And we're going to look right at you, and you're going to look right at us, and let's be here together.
Like that idea of togetherness is interesting too. Like the idea of togetherness is, I think maybe it sounds even more important to you. And I wonder if that affects you as Neko Case, the regular rabid collaborator, because a big part of your career has been working with other people, whether that's just performing with other people, doing covers with other people, being in bands with other people like you are now, and, like with the new Pornographers?
Well, I've never, ever been a solo performer in that I don't perform by myself with a guitar, with a mic. I never wanted to be in a band to be alone, to showcase what I have. Like, I've only ever wanted to be in a band to feel that camaraderie with other people and to make that human pyramid of music, because I think that's more powerful from my end. Not when I watch other people. Obviously, like, I'll see somebody like Iris Dement perform solo and I'll lose my and be a puddle of tears, and like, she's great at it. Me, I'm more interested in making the sounds with other people and having the balance. And some people go to college and get master's degrees, and some people have to go to trade school. And for me, being in many different bands and collaborating is definitely like being in trade school, because I've never had any sort of musical training. I've had art training, which is kind of like half trade school, half getting a degree. But I've always been a fan of trying new things, and I haven't always been a fan of trying to leave my comfort zone, but you don't grow if you don't do that, and now I'm really starting to enjoy that.
I kissed you in the morning, but only in my mind's eye. The sun, it rolls along your sleeping.
I'm Sean Cannon. It's the Guest List. Let's go ahead and get back into my conversation with Neko Case, who, while she's made several amazing records, prefers to spend way more time in a concert hall than in a studio.
I think I'm a performing musician first and foremost. Like, I do like to play live. Some people, they like to spend more time in the studio. I like to do that too, but I think that I kind of get off more on performing because it's a more immediate joy. Like, the being in the studio is like having to give your thesis for your doctorate every time. And, you really put yourself through a lot of stress. Not because it's horrible, it's because you just care so hard. And it's expensive, and you want to do something new. And every time you make a record, your capacity to hear mistakes gets better, or hear technical difficulties. It's like you just increase your hearing capacity. And so instead of it being easier every time like you think it's going to be, it's actually harder every single time. So you got to go in realizing that and just accepting it, which isn't always the easiest. Every now and again, you're like, I got to get out of here, see the sunshine. I can't hear my voice again. I hate it.
Yeah, and this is nothing like... I like that analogy, though. It's like delivering your thesis.
Oh, and your hearing is just like seeing, in that, like, if you stare at a bright light and you turn away, there's just like a big, weird, shiny black spot where stuff should be. Like, the same thing happens with your hearing. Like, you wear a groove in your capacity to hear something so that you're not a good judge of it anymore. So you have to get away from it. Like, there are people who can go in the studio and make a record all at once, and I can't do that. I just fatigue too easily, so I try to do it in bursts. And playing a song live is the best way to practice it. So, I don't know. I definitely love both, but I think, not that you asked me, I'm just rambling, but I like playing live. Mm-hmm. And
Better.
So getting away from home and playing live there's still movement to it. And I do love going all these different places all the time. And I'm sure that's part of what makes living on an isolated rural farm doable too, is that you don't really miss out on anything. You just kind of have the best of both worlds, which I'm super grateful for.
Or there's no FOMO when you're out here, and then you can go back there and come back out here.
I don't think I've had FOMO since I was like maybe 21 years old. I
kind of figured, since you seem to have an aversion to people taking pictures at concerts and stuff, because I think that's primarily the I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but I think that's a lot of what that mentality is. Like, I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure I always have everything. I want to make sure everything's documented.
Yeah,
just in
that's
case.
true. It's partly that, and I wonder too, like, are people a little bit afraid of the time they're having in a weird way, so that they have to keep themselves a safe distance from it a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is more the FOMO thing that you're talking about for sure. There's probably all kinds of.
I mean, I think that's a really valid point, though. Like, the idea that people come to see a show not to be present, but to get away from something else. It's like you're getting away from something else, but you're not actually going to something to get away from it, if that makes sense, you know?
I mean,
yeah.
I love just being there and just listening. You know, I'm the kind of person who might take a picture or two now and again, but I generally don't because they never look that good. I'm not a great photographer, and it's a phone. I'm sorry, it's a phone. It's just not going to be what I want it to be. But if people took a couple pictures, I wouldn't mind. But what people don't realize is that, like, the laser on the front of their camera goes right in your eye. You forget the words. It fucks you up. It's super disruptive, and the people behind them are super bummed out. And, you know, I've been to shows where I went to see Adamant on my birthday, I remember, and, you know, there wasn't anybody who wasn't filming. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't get anywhere near them to see what the band was doing. Like, I wanted to see what the whole band was doing and Adamant, because I love Adamant. And the show was great, you know, but it was just all these people who seemed really disinterested doing that. And I just thought about him and, you know, whether they care about him as an artist or not, or, you know, think what he does is important. The guy had been through all this trouble with, you know, mental health, and he's a huge advocate for, like, coming back from, you know, mental illness. And for that reason, I was like, what a cool thing that he has a new record and he's going on tour and doing his, like, I wanted to support him because I loved him, you know, when I was young too. So I just thought, that's so disrespectful. I hope that doesn't hurt his morale, that people are just holding their phones up. You know what I mean?
That has to be a weird situation to be in if you're someone like that who wasn't in front of crowds often and then all of a sudden came back to this, you know, because if you've been performing for the last 15 years, you've seen more and more phones like creep in.
Yeah, and, you know, I generally ask people not to, and I'm like, come on. And people are 99% of the time are cool. Sometimes they're not. And you just have those people taken out because the people behind them don't want to police them and they don't want them there. So I'm going to look like the asshole if I do it. But at the same time, enough is enough sometimes. People, not like I said, 99% of the time, if I'm like, hey, could you stop filming? They're like, oh, sorry, absolutely. And I'm like, cool, thank you, awesome. And no hard feelings whatsoever. But because people, like, I realize people do film everything now and they forget. It's totally normal. But, you know, at the same time, you're like, okay, don't point that at me because it's weird.
Well, because it's you. Like, that's I think people think whatever I put on my phone is me.
Well, there's also, exactly, that's a really good way to think of it. You're absolutely right. That's a great way to put it. And also, you know, there's the mythology of music where the audience is invisible. And it's like, audience, you're not invisible. We know you're there. We see you. And we care what's happening in front of you. And we came a long way and we rehearsed for weeks and weeks and weeks because we want to do a good job for you. So don't take this the wrong way, audience, but we are here and we see you and we love you. So put the phone down because we got you.
Well,
but if you need to make a call, go out. Yeah, I get it. Go out it's cool to go, like, I wouldn't stop you from going to the bathroom. Do what you got to do.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that idea you were talking about before where it's a partnership. And I think a lot of people see that hierarchy of the musician and then we're down here and maybe they're up in their ivory tower and can't see us take these pictures or just don't care. Mm-hmm. But it's I think that might be psychologically part of it too. You know, I've been to shows as an audience member where, you know, people were kind of having a good time and maybe, you know, being a little bit loud, but not loud any louder than is normal in a rock club. And I've heard the
the band just bitched them out. You don't like music, just shut up. It's like, well, actually, it's their Friday night too, and they can talk to each other. Like, I understand not being really loud over the top, but I actually feel a little more comfortable if there's a little bit of noise.
Like a little
It took a
chatter.
long time to play theaters, for example, like sit-downs theaters. Man, I felt weird for years. Like, I was terrified of them because it was literally so quiet.
And everybody was just transfixed on you at that point.
Yeah, and you're like, oh my God. This is super weird and surreal, which it is. But, you know, when you realize that the audience came there and paid money and trust that you're going to, you know, do your thing, you're like, oh, okay. It's like a gift they're giving you that you got to be cool. You got to be cool enough with yourself to accept.
Land words across my heart, symbols of infinity, elements so pure, dark number.
I am the spark.
My guest today is Neko Case, and while she's finally cool enough with herself to accept the gift of an audience's attention, doesn't mean she always feels normal. You know, whatever normal might be.
I still feel a little weird just because I'm 45 and I don't have a husband or children, and you know, I chose music as my husband or wife or whatever music is. So I've had some weird looking at myself in the mirror moments going, where the are you? Like, is this where you meant to be? Like, time goes by really fast, you know, and I don't feel any different than when I was 19 years old. Like, I still feel like it's the first day of school and anything could happen, you know, in a good way. But I also realize this isn't the normal path people take. So there was a lot of being unsure of who I was supposed to be. But then I just realized, like, well, good or bad, I chose this life. Nobody forced me to take it. So that's like a feminist victory in itself right there. Even if some of the decisions were made based on past abuses or lack of this or lack of that, it's still the choices I made. And I decided, well, I think I want to become a better musician. So this particular project is really come at the best possible time because it feels like a masterclass of learning from people who I have tremendous respect for. And on one hand, there was a lot of freeform trust that I could give them because I knew they weren't going to make music. I knew that they care about quality and they make beautiful things and powerful things on their own. And you know, they do it in kind of different realms from each other and from me. Like, we're very similar in many ways, but we operate in different ways. Like, but we're all alpha individuals who run our own careers. So that was similar, but everything else was different from there.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point like the worlds in which you travel. I mean, I know there's some overlap there, but you know.
Yeah, but then every now and again I'd be like, Katie, what was it like to be on Pee-wee's Christmas special? Pretty much like if there was a heaven on earth, like if I could think of a heaven, like that would kind of be it. Like that would be the be all end all. It's like, oh yeah, you were on Hee Haw. Mm-hmm. Hello. And you know, it's surreal. But at the same time, it's so nice to see that somebody could go to those places that for me don't exist except in fantasy and come back completely unscathed and superhuman and warm and hilarious and super giving and totally understanding those things and knowing what gifts they were given and appreciating them in a way that they want to share them with other people.
Right, because you see a lot of people, not you specifically, but in general, go through the ringer, go through all those things and come out like a different person.
Some people are
Yeah.
and some people just come out kind of warped. But coming out the other side is definitely something everyone I think does around 40 years old. You know, it's I think some people call it midlife crisis or whatever, but we didn't used to live this long. We used to die at 40. You know what I mean? Like, we have these weird scientifically increased lives that why not go through a second wave where you go, did I become the adult I intended to be? I'm going to need to stew on this for a while to see. That whole looking at yourself in the mirror thing going, am I who I thought I was? Is pretty scary. But it's really necessary. But meeting people who are your idols is one of the most terrifying things in the world. But to see that they've come out the other side, it's like a soccer stadium of cheering goes up in your heart like, yeah, victory. And it doesn't have to be for you. Like, their victory is everyone's victory. And it feels amazing.
I mean, do you feel like you've come out on the other side of that yet?
I feel like I'm kind of coming out of it. Like, I definitely feel very calm in this situation with Laura and Katie, and I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I feel incredibly humbled by them every day and super. It's such a company line. It's so gross, but it's true.
Different when you mean
I
it.
feel, I really do mean it, and I just feel like a disgusting. I'm so blessed. Like, I'm not blessed. I worked my balls off,
Right.
but I sure am grateful to be here. And I'm so glad it turned out this way, and I didn't end up making a decision that f***ed me, and I couldn't be here to go through this because this is where I wanted to go.
I wanna be here with you, not bracing for what comes next. I got some new words, I can see sideways. If there's a limit, it hasn't found me yet.
Neko, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
I'm not going to gush too much because it's unbecoming of a gentleman. But
Is it?
so I've been told.
I'm kidding.
I won't be I won't be a gentleman. I'm a really big fan of everything you do. I have
Thank
been for a
you.
long time. Your music was formative for me, both your solo stuff and all of the other things that you've done. So I'm just going to be honest and frank about that.
Thank you.
So-
I'm going to try to take the compliment without turning into a pretzel. But I really do appreciate it.
You're halfway
and
there.
I value it. And
Yes.
I can't be without you. I can't.
I would have brought you your favorite hamburger from Louisville for the day, but I figured it wouldn't travel. Because that is your right from
Yeah,
from
it's
the
really
21C?
good. I have a couple, but the 21C is in my top 5.
Okay.
No question. I can't cheat on my hometown favorite burger in Tacoma, the Frisco Freeze, but I do cheat on my hometown burger. But you're still
It's
okay.
You're true to it. You love it, but sometimes
they should know how much I love it if I'm still talking about it, even though I have burgers all over the world. See,
you got burgers. Who are you, Jerry Lee Lewis?
pretty much.
You got burgers all over the world.
I do have burgers.
All right. On that note, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Neko Case's latest album, a collaboration with Katie Lang and Laura Veirs, conveniently titled Case Lang Veirs, is out now. And I think, maybe, after a few weeks, she's finally unknotted herself. Let's hope she's not half pretzel anymore.